All right, there we go. Okay, so we're officially recording. I cannot tell you how much I love teaching this course, especially with Dr. Helgi, who I've been teaching with now for over 6 years. We actually just published a book together, so that's going to be coming out soon. We're very excited about it. But we love this class, and I want to tell you why before I go into the nitty-gritty. When we first started teaching this course around COVID, we realized a couple things. When you guys, how many of you have dipped your toes into reading some of the materials?
I have.
Okay, I see some hands and I hear some I haves, and that's great. So, and this may not be true for all of you, but some of you may feel like you're dying a thousand deaths because it's not the most exciting thing at times, especially when you're reading old case law. They're using basically a different language and it's not very captivating. And so Dr. Helgi and I talked about it, and there's such a great, rich history because no case makes it all the way to the Supreme Court because it's boring. They make it all the way up that ladder because there's something exciting that happened. Good, bad, whatever it is, something big happened. And case law doesn't do itself any favors by stripping away the humanity from a lot of these cases. And so after talking about it, again, we decided, we're going to bring this stuff back to life because students enjoy it. And I think it helps you absorb what the court is trying to achieve by understanding the context of these cases, the backstory of these cases, and kind of bringing to life the how and the why. So that way, when you look at these rulings, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Now I get why the judges ruled in this way versus just reading these very dry opinions and these very dry facts. And you're like, all right, cool, that was interesting, but now I'm really not sure what I just read. So if that's how you feel as of right now, I want to allay any panic, talk you off the ledge, and tell you that this class is designed and I don't want to say to be fun, but it is fun. At least for us, it is. So I hope it is for you guys as well. So that was my introduction to the course. And I want to politely ask you guys if you could mute yourselves because we have a lot of material to dig through every single week. And sometimes it can be distracting if, like I mentioned a second ago, I had that great student who I adored, but he would always listen to the lectures on his tractor, and sometimes he would mute himself. So it was a little hard to lecture with, like, engines in the background. So just mute yourself. But with that being said, that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. If and when you have questions, please ask. You're welcome to either verbally cut me off, you won't hurt my feelings, or just put it in the chat. Either way is perfectly fine. The one thing I will say is I realized over time that Zoom doesn't show you the chat. Like, so when you ask a question in chat, I'll verbally say it out loud just so that people who are watching this after the fact in a recording can know what the specific question you asked that I'm answering. So if it sounds weird that I'm reading all the chats, that's why I do that. All right. So today I'll briefly introduce why myself and Dr. Helgi are teaching this class, and then get into what you guys really care about, which is how the heck to navigate the course, what's expected of you, and I also want to put in there what's expected of us, right? Because we have requirements and duties that we abide by as well. And then the fun stuff, which is the Supreme Court and the Magna Carta, which the story of the Magna Carta is amazing, like chef's kiss. It is incredible. So I'm really excited to tell you that story. And then I'll describe to you your first assignment. And it's not bad, I promise. So deep breath, you got this. I promise I'll walk you through it every step of the way. All right. So a little bit, and I'll move my head so that way you can see it. Little bit about me, and this is why I mentioned coffee earlier. I'm 100% a caffeine addict, love it. So typically when you see me, people laugh because Dr. Helgi, he's like very measured and calm and pragmatic, and I'm pretty much the hummingbird that has had way too much caffeine every day. And what's funny is I wasn't a cat person, but now I'm surrounded by cats, and this is real, and I'm going to show my face as I say this. Did you guys know they're cat shows? Like legit cat shows. And they're amazing. If they come into your area, oh, thank you, Susan. That makes me feel better. She said I'm the same with caffeine. Then if you get a chance to go to a cat show, go because cat people are weird. I say that lovingly because now I am one. But it's weird fun. And it is the funnest thing in the world. That's my daughter. She got first place for her stuffy. So again, it's just kind of a fun, weird world that we stumbled into. So now I'm a weird cat person and I love it. And it's fun. And in terms of, oh, good. Oh, Vanessa said I'm allergic to cats. See, I think my husband said that, but he really wasn't. So that makes, oh, that's what we have. Geneva said I have two Bengals. That's just what we have. That's great. And Angel said I'm a new cat lady. Well, welcome to the club, the weird club. It's always fun. So I used to practice law in Louisiana. I was a city associate attorney and I loved it. It was my life, my world. I loved practicing Louisiana. It was never boring because Louisiana is never boring. It's like a whole nother country, which by the way, right now is king cake season. So I hope some of y'all are enjoying a little bit of king cake and Mardi Gras spirit. And if you want a recipe from Sir for an amazing king cake, I can send it to you. So just email me if you're interested. But yeah, I love practicing. I practiced at the federal, state, municipal level, and I loved it. But after doing it for so long, I realized that I always kept teaching on the side, just like for fun. And then I realized I really love teaching. It's my passion. I love it. And when you have a family, time is of the essence, and I didn't want to miss 1 second with my kiddos. So my husband and I moved back to Texas, which pop quiz. For any of you guys who have moved out of Texas, what are the top three things that you would miss?
uh,
Anybody?
Brisket, Whataburger, um, and Blue Bonnet. Oh, HEB. HEB is a good one too.
Okay, Susan, long distance high five. That is amazing because you hit on two of the big ones, which was Whataburger. There's just something about it. It's our culture, right? With my husband, I used to actually drive to Mississippi, sadly, because at the time there wasn't a Whataburger close to us in New Orleans. And so we drove all the way to Mississippi for Whataburger because it was like we're missing something, but they just don't put the love into it. There's like they don't put enough salt. There was missing something. And then HEB, Piggly Wiggly, and Winn-Dixie. I'm sorry, but they're at grocery stores of sadness. They're just no. So HEB, when we came back, it was like the heavens parted, the angels sang. We're like, oh, this is amazing. But the other thing was Tex-Mex. We really missed. Oh, somebody said Buc-ee's. That's a good one too. Barbecue, absolutely. But yeah, Mexican food. What they say is Mexican food there. I'm sorry, but it's not. It's just not. It's just bad. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody. It was not our cup of tea. So when we came back, and as I say that out loud, I realized that everything we missed about Texas was food related. But you know what? No regrets. That's just how we roll. Literally now, that's how we roll. So we were really excited to get back. And so I've been teaching and researching now for about over a decade, and it's been a good thing. So right now, I got my PhD many years ago, and right now I'm about to open up a cold case clinic here in Corpus Christi. So I'm very excited about that because there's a lot of cases that haven't been solved yet. So that is one of my really happy achievements. But one thing I want to say at the end of this introduction is that I have a motto, and I'm going to share it with you, and it's KISS. Does anybody know what KISS stands for?
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes, except I say silly, but you're right. Yes, you're 100% right. And I say that because over the years, and I know you guys probably feel like this too, especially if you've been in the program for a little bit, law in particular has an ugly way of overcomplicating things that are actually very simple. And so as we move through, I try to, and I hope that Dr. Helgi and I achieve this, but we've really worked hard at simplifying very complex topics. Because they've been overcomplicated because that's what lawyers are good at. We overcomplicate stuff, but we can also simplify stuff. So that is my motto. And that's how we proceed throughout this term is in a simple way, digestible chunks, because there's no need to overcomplicate it, right? All right, so now I'm getting into a little bit deeper. So we're taking it toe by toe, step by step, which is navigating the course. I hope all of you have taken the time to navigate it a little bit. And let me move my head so you can see this. So when you enter the course, your course section might be different. You might be in a different course section, but you'll basically see this, right? Now, if you don't see this, let me know. And oh, and just to let you guys know, because I just got a chat saying somebody might need to leave. You guys, at any time you guys need to hop off the video record or the lecture, please do so. You won't hurt my feelings. I know that a lot of you are working or in different, environments. So just go for it. We record all of our office hours and then we post them after the fact in the announcements. So don't feel bad if you need to hop off. That's absolutely not a problem. But when you enter, I want you to look on this left-hand side. Now, you guys won't see this stuff because this is hidden from you for right now, but you'll see this stuff. I want you guys to always go to the module section, and you should, I hope, have looked at all of this stuff first because it says start here, right? So there's a course intro video, our syllabus, which is extremely important, meet your professors, course overview, blah, 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 blah. Now, the virtual office hours, I apologize. They accidentally put my old link. That's why I panicked this morning. So I was like, oh my God, that's a link from 2024. So I had to update it this morning. So I apologize for that last minute hiccup. But that'll be replaced right after this class. So that'll be updated. But the introductory unit. I really hope that you guys look through these modules in the order that we give them to you because there is a method to our madness. So make sure that you go link to link to link to link and try not to skip around because if you do, you might miss something. Now, Etta, you asked a great question in the chat. She said, should we attend or refuse both office hours? Well, hopefully you don't refuse us. That would be a bummer. But you don't have to, well, first, let me preface this. You don't have to attend office hours at all. They're not required. So if you think you can do awesome by just basing your knowledge on the materials that are given to you, you can do that. We've had students do that, and sometimes it works for them. Oh, I know, Etta, I'm just teasing. She said, sorry, I meant review, but refuse was just funnier. But in terms of attending one or the other, so this is what I will say. Dr. Helgi and I have different teaching styles. I go more into the history, the context of the cases so you can better understand how they got to the ruling they did. Dr. Helgi's office hour is set up to where he goes into a little bit more of the application. So if you can attend both, but if you can't, it's really a style preference. If you like his style of teaching better, or if it fits your schedule better, then attend his because he's great. I cannot rave about Dr. Helgi enough. He's one of my favorite people, and so is his wife. So if you ever need to take a class like a policy regulation-based course, definitely take Dr. Helgi because she's great. But neither here nor there, it's really up to you. So that I'll just kind of say, does that answer your question? I know I kind of beat around the bush a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so it's really up to you. You'll do great if you just attend one, but if you can attend both, or if you can't attend either, you can still do great. Now this is a biggie, and I want everybody to perk up your ears when I go to this next slide. When you tackle the assignments, I want you guys, and this is hard, and I say it's hard, let me move this over here, because we're raised to be very humble, typically, right? The majority. So nobody walks around, hopefully, saying like, I'm awesome and this is great, right? We're raised to be much more modest in the way we speak, like, oh, that's a really good thing. And maybe they did this or maybe they did that. In legal writing, you need to put that in the dumpster and set it on fire. And I mean that. In legal writing, you've got to be more confident. So this is a big tip for starting out. So for example, do not say, I think the Supreme Court is the most powerful branch because why is that statement a bummer?
Because of the I think. That's my opinion.
No,
There's
you're,
some doubt.
yes, both of you are right. So two long distance high fives, you're exactly right. It's a filler word. It doesn't really add anything, right? So, and let me put it to you this way. If you were going to see an attorney and they go before the court and they tell the jury, I think my client didn't do it. You'd be like, I want a new attorney ASAP, right? You want an attorney, a legal writer, a legal scholar, which you guys all are sitting in this class, to be more confident, to speak as if they know, even if you feel like you don't know, right? Fake it until you make it. So instead of saying, I think the Supreme Court is the most powerful, say the Supreme Court is the most powerful branch because blah, 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 right? So in your writing, look for when or if you use that type of language because it's a filler word. It doesn't strengthen your statements at all. In fact, it tends to weaken it. The reader's going to think, I don't think this person really knows what they're talking about, right? And it takes away valuable word space. For those of you who haven't seen the first discussion, how many words are you allowed on the first discussion assignment?
50.
That's right, only 50, which is really hard. And Caitlin, you're exactly right. In the chat, she pointed out, I think. Dan said passive voice. Yep. And Howard said 50. All of you are right. You guys are on the ball. You had your coffee. So yeah, it takes away that word space because think about that. That's 2 words right off the bat that you lost. And so if you continue on that pattern throughout your assignment submission, you're going to have a whole lot of words that are just sucking away the strength from what you really think by saying you think. We know you think. It's your writing. There's no need to say that, right? So look for that in your writing. That's just a friendly tip. Now, here is a quick pop quiz for y'all. For course assignments, may I implement outside readings that are not provided to me in the course to justify my analysis? Tag, you're it.
No.
Okay, good. Everybody's saying no, and you're exactly right. And I like Caitlin's nope. Exactly. The answer is a big, big no. And if you do, you're going to get this face from me. So don't do it. And the reason why we don't want you to do it is because today you can find support for anything. And I mean that sincerely. Whatever you think, you can find support for. We don't want you to have that luxury because we want to see if you're able to take the concepts, the legal standards that we're teaching you, and apply it as we're giving it to you. That's where the real test of knowledge comes from, right? So use what we give you. And with that being said, just to kind of make you giggle, examples of what's out there and why not to trust the internet because there's a lot of crazy stuff out there. These are real headlines. Conan O'Brien assaults sea turtles while canoeing. I don't think he did that. David Beckham was a Chinese goalkeeper in the 18th century. If that's true, I want to know his aging secret because that's incredible. So just don't depend on it. And I also want to preface this. I've had a lot of questions already, emails asking about ChatGPT usage. And I will say, you should not use ChatGPT or another AI platform to create your argument, to write your argument. That's a no-no because why are you here, right? You're here to learn how to critically think and to write and analyze like a legal scholar. With that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with checking arguments or spelling or grammar using those types of things. That's totally fine. I do that on a daily basis. So I wouldn't prevent you guys from doing what I do. Just don't use it in a way to create your argument, write it for you, any of that stuff. The other thing is be careful on finding any resources, supportive resources using those type of platforms because they, and some of you might know this, but they hallucinate, meaning the platform is designed to please you. So if you're asking, I need a case that goes into blah, 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 it'll say, great, I'll create one for you. And so that case may not even exist. And we actually had that happen a couple semesters ago where a student gave us these resources that one, weren't what we had assigned, but two, none of them even existed. And I actually felt really bad for the student because I don't think they realized quite what they did until we explained it to them. I like to think that people are good and they, glass half full.
I actually heard about that.
I'm sorry?
I said I actually heard about that. Like
Yeah.
how, yeah, they were using, it was creating cases that were non-existent. And I really thought that was kind of strange. But I didn't realize that it was from here.
Yeah, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It was a bummer because I saw these cases. I was like, I've never heard of that case. And like, we're pretty on the ball. And so we looked at it, I was like, it doesn't exist. Holy cow. And so it was really interesting. Now, Vanessa brought up a good point. She said that she used Grammarly. That's 100% okay. Again, I use Grammarly, I use ChatGPT, I use those platforms. Again, it's a genie you're not going to be able to put back in the bottle. But I also see the value in using those because it does clean up if you have rough sentences or a misspelled word that you missed, or if you have trouble reading because you have dyslexia or some other means that those platforms help you, use them. That's what they're there for. Just don't use them. And you guys know this. I'm just saying it to complete a sentence, but just don't use it to create your argument or to write your work. That, that's a big no-no. And then somebody said in the chat, many AI platforms have not been given info past 2021, 2022. You can ask your AI when was the last time it was updated, and it'll tell you the year. Oh, that's really a good point too. That's absolutely true. And as you guys know, there's been a lot of huge case law that has happened since then. So you'd be missing a pretty big portion of the jurisprudence. So very good point, guys. So I'm about to give you some gold. Are you ready? I know Christmas just happened, but this is a late present for you guys. I'm not sure if Dr. Helge included this in the syllabus this term. I don't think he did. But when you're asking, where do I find a case? Where do I find that? Where do I look? I'm about to show you. Are you guys ready? Drum roll. And the answer is, how many of you have ever used this platform? Anybody? Okay, I see one low. Geneva, you're it. That's it. Let's see. Oh, and that's a good point. Someone said you can also tell AI to not hallucinate and it gets better result. That's a good point. And Howard said, I browsed it. Great. This is the best website to find any case. It is gold. And this is why I really like it too. For those of you who learn well by hearing things as opposed to just seeing things, this website, video cameras are not allowed in the Supreme Court. So you will never, and I mean this literally, and it's kind of rare to say this, but you'll never find footage of a case within the Supreme Court, like going on with the attorneys going before the justices and orating their case. You're never going to find that because it's not allowed. But like many things, lawyers found a loophole. So yes, video is not allowed, but they record the arguments. So you can actually hear the oral arguments made before the Supreme Court. And I can tell you, again, if you're a legal nerd, if you really enjoy, diving into it, it's awesome to hear. In law school, if law school is any of your paths, this is actually what one of my professors who later became a Fifth Circuit judge, he would actually tell us to do. And so we'd get together after class and we'd drink a bunch of wine and we'd listen to oral arguments and we're like, woo, that's how we partied, guys. I know we partied too hard. But it was amazing because we could actually hear the justices and where they were going and their decision making by their questions. So if you're interested, that's an option. Not required at all, just food for thought. Now, when you look up a case, you will see something like this. And this is just an example. Let's see. I see Cora Small said, fellow classmates, has anyone created GroupMe chat or the course so we can communicate? That's a great suggestion. Great. I hope that you guys do that. Vanessa said, what's a really good one to listen to? Oh gosh, I'll actually give y'all a list because especially the older ones like Brown v. Board, they're amazing. And then oral arguments right now on women's sports cases in Supreme Court. Yes, that's exactly right. See, you guys are on the ball. You guys are going to be a great group. I'm very excited about y'all. So when you guys go in, you're going to be given two options under opinions. You can either look at the syllabus or the view case. As you guys can see, I circled the view case. It's very important that you read the full enchilada. Don't go to syllabus and get the Cliff Note version, the short version of it, unless you're really pressed for time. Okay, if you're really pressed for time, you can do that, but you're not going to get the full breadth of the case by doing that. So read the whole case. Okay. The other cool thing about OEA that I like is on this right-hand side where it says appellant, appellee, location, blah, blah, blah. On the bottom part of that, it actually breaks it down into a format of writing that many of you will tackle in week 3, which is called IRAC. So if you haven't heard of that format, don't panic. We'll explain it later. But they actually break down every case into the facts, the issue before the court, the ruling, which is really cool. So it's a good way I would suggest reading that before you dig into the full case, because I feel like it kind of puts lanes in your mind as you read, and you're like, okay, this is what I'm diving into, right? So it's kind of a cool way to get your mind right. And if you just want the difference between the two options, again, the view case gives you everything. It gives you the major opinion if any of the justices dissented, meaning they didn't agree with the majority of the justices, or concurring opinions, which is when a judge says, I agree with the ruling, but just not on how you got there, right? So it has all of that. The syllabus doesn't. Again, it's just the summary of the main points, but either one. All right. So I mentioned some things. I used to roll over these terms, but then I realized that some students aren't familiar with this world, and that is to be expected. So I don't want you guys to feel bad or have a panic attack if I use a word that you're not familiar with. And I don't like rolling over words either. So when you see in the opinion a dissent, that means that they disagree with the majority opinion. So the main ruling, the ruling that matters, I'm just going to say it like that, the ruling that matters. There may be one or two or more justices that say, you know what, we think that ruling sucks, and this is why. And that's what the dissent is. Okay. So the dissent is not ruling. It really doesn't matter. But it is a good way to get kind of a gauge on where the justices are at. Now, the concurring opinion is basically saying we agree with the majority opinion, with the opinion that matters, but we don't like how they got there. Okay, so that's what that means. We would have come to that ruling a different way. Now, again, only the majority opinion can be used as binding precedent. The dissent, the concurring opinions, they don't hold the weight that the majority opinion does. So a good way to remember it is majority, that's the major one. Concurring is sure. And then the dissent is hell bent, no, we don't like the majority opinion. Okay, so again, this is just kind of to help you tackle the cases once you start to dive into them. So hopefully that helps. Oh, and before I forget, somebody asked me if I share my PowerPoints, and the answer is yes. So if I go past the slide that you're like, oh God, she's going too fast, I share them so you can absolutely go back and look it up. Now, if there's a word that you don't know what it means, back 100 years ago when I was in law school, we actually had to buy books like the dictionary, the Black's Law Dictionary. But now, fancy, everything's online for free. So this is actually a free law dictionary that they're actually requiring students at St. Mary's in San Antonio to use. So it is a great website. It's free, which is always a wonderful thing to hear. So look up words when, not if, but when you see something like, what does that mean? Look it up. And I say that because it may be a really big detail that contributes to your understanding. So don't roll over words. All right, so you guys ready for some trivia? I hear complete crickets. I'll just, in my head, I'm hearing y'all go like, yay!
Yes, excited.
Okay, woo! Calm down, guys. That was awkward. Okay, so I like trivia. I don't know about y'all, but I think it's fun. So let's start out with some baby steps. Does the United States Constitution specify what the Supreme Court does, what power they have?
Yes. Yes.
I hear yeses. Vanessa, you look skeptical.
I'm just I'm like I double think things all the time. So,
That's
but
okay.
yes, I believe it does.
Okay, I see a lot of yeses. Are y'all ready for the answer? I feel really evil because I'm setting y'all up.
It's a trick question. That's what I was thinking.
Let's see. Let's see. The answer is, let's look at the article. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may, blah, 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 blah. Does it say what power they have? Or who sits on it? Or what requirements they have?
Well, it says the judicial power, but doesn't actually spell out what they get.
Bingo. It doesn't say, well, what exactly do they have the power to do? What is judicial power? It's not defined. It's nowhere in there. Does it say what the requirements are to be a Supreme Court judge? It leaves a lot out, right? So we assume that all that's in there because there's one thing I want to point out. Our United States Constitution, and you should be reading that this week, by the way, is actually the shortest United States or shortest Constitution in the world. And yet it is also the longest surviving. And one of the questions that people ask time and time and time again is, how is it that our United States Constitution has outlasted pretty much everybody's? And this is my opinion, okay? And I always preface, if I ever say my opinion, I will say this is the law according to Dr. Shaw, okay? Not according to the Supreme Court, which is, I think it's because it's simple, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. And one of the arguments against that is it leaves a lot of things undefined, right? Which can be good, but can also be bad. And so a lot of the case law that we're looking into this term are those elements of our United States Constitution that are undefined, like judicial power. When does a case end? It doesn't even say that. It says judicial power, but again, when is that end point? The Supreme Court was not always a thing, right? So we will get into an amazing case next week about that. And then
Doesn't that, Dr. Shaw, doesn't that in that case represent that the Supreme Court, it reinforces common law because they make decisions based on precedent and prior case law?
Say that one more time.
With the judicial power, and you defined it as you think it survives because it's simple, and the justices get to make decisions based on precedent and prior case law, which ultimately I think supports common law.
Well, that's what common law is,
Yeah.
right? Judicial decisions. But one thing you mentioned at the very beginning of your statement is judicial power. That concept wasn't even defined until the case that we go into next week. And so they literally had to create themselves. The Supreme Court literally had to define what they do, how they do it, when they do it themselves. So their power is actually self-created in the case that we'll go into next week. So the theme that I want you guys to take away is that it is vague. But again, there can be some pros and cons to that. Geneva said it's open for interpretation. Correct, from them. Let's see. Dan said sets a framework versus how-to manual. Vanessa said it's broad. I remember that question from this week. Okay, good. You guys, your minds are in the right place. That's great. Okay. And yes, you were right. Article 3. Now, the Supreme Court is granted the final word within the Constitution. They're given the ability to say what the law is, not by the Constitution, but through case law. Again, I gave you that sneak peek about the case that we'll go into next week, which is my favorite case to lecture about in the world, and you'll understand why next week. All right, another one. In order to be a Supreme Court judge, you must have your law degree. Is that true or false?
False.
False.
I think
One
you
of
guys,
them, one of them didn't even have a high school diploma.
that's exactly, yeah, and that's probably how y'all are feeling right now, the Scooby-Doo face. You don't have to have a law degree. In fact, a lot of the judge positions here in Texas don't require a legal degree, right? It's kind of an interesting fun fact. A Supreme Court justice must have been born in the United States. Is that true or false?
False.
False.
You guys totally are on to me. You know. All right. So again, nope. In fact, Justice Brewer in the late 1800s, he was not American born. And talk about nepotism. His brother also served as a justice. So they were born in Turkey. So again, there are a lot of things that the average Joe assumes to be true, but is not true. There's a lot of wiggle room and broadness that is born into the United States Constitution. So let's talk about the journey of a case. Now, getting a case heard by the Supreme Court is like reaching the top of Mount Everest. It is extremely difficult. It is very rare. So most cases die at the appellate level. And I say that not in an ugly way, but it's very rare that they're going to go further on. I had 2 cases make it to the Fifth Circuit, but the number of cases that I applied for them to hear were more than I can count. But again, it's very rare for a case to move on, especially to the United States Supreme Court. It's very rare. In 2010, there was a success rate of cases that were submitted to be heard by the Supreme Court at about 3%, right? And within the past 5 years, it's really maintained at about 1%. So now it's even gotten harder. So they're very, 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 very picky about the cases that they hear, right? Some cases that you're like, yeah, of course they're going to hear that. they're like, yeah, well, hard pass. We're not going to look at that this year, right? So it's extremely rare for cases to go up there. And just to bring y'all's attention, Cora just created a group me for the class. So way to go, Cora. That's awesome. And Cora, I'll try to, do you mind if I copy and paste that into the announcements for your classmates? Would that be okay? I just want to get your permission. Okay. Yeah, awesome, awesome. That's great. So if you are wondering what's on the docket, the Supreme Court tells you what's coming up, and one of you, and I apologize, I can't remember which one, have pointed out that there is a case right now being heard about females in sports. It's really interesting. So you never know what is on the docket because a lot of times it's not advertised a lot or it's not really covered a lot on and media. So if you want to know, it's all available to y'all via that list. So again, I will share it. Now we get into the fun part. All right. Well, hopefully you guys think the other part was fun too, but let me make sure. Okay, I'm doing good on time. Yay. All right. So the Magna Carta. The United States Supreme Court was not even a twinkle in our founding fathers' eyes until well past they were in that room in Philadelphia without, any AC, very stinky apparently, wasn't a great time in that room. Before that even again was any type of inspiration for them. The Magna Carta is what really serves as the foundation to everything that we have. And I say that sincerely. But before I go into how, does anybody recognize that cartoon character that, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated Disney cartoon characters ever?
Robin Hood?
Yes, exactly. Yay, that makes me so happy. So great cartoon. But what's really cool, and yes, you guys are on the ball. What's neat is that actually was somewhat historically accurate. He was a turd, and that's the technical word for the day, guys. He's a turd. But he was not a great individual. He is, of course, Prince John, and one of you said that in the chat, so that made me very happy that you recognize him. But Prince John historically was a nightmare, and I'm actually glad he was a nightmare because had he not been a nightmare, we would never have had the Magna Carta. So King John was called the Lionheart, which is why in the cartoon Robin Hood they depict him as such, kind of a fun fact. But yeah, he wasn't a good egg. Just to kind of give you some highlights of his infamous feats. He imprisoned his former wife, which seemed to be a thing then, and he starved opponents to death regularly, murdered his nephew. But what the cherry on the top that made a lot of people very angry with him were two things, which is he pulled the beards of Irish chiefs that went before him, which is very insulting. But even more so than that is you never mess with a person's pocketbook. That's a no-no, right? And he started to raise the taxes and taking land from some of the nobility, the barons in that region, and they were irate. They're like, who are you to take away my stuff? Like, that's baloney, right? I'm sure they said it just like that. And so they banded together. They actually stormed the castle. They were very angry. And they knew that their power was basically dwindling away. He was just usurping more and more and more of what little they had accrued. So he started taking away their castles, he took over their courts, taxed without justification, the normal thing. And they retaliated, again, storming. But here's where it gets good. And let me move this up. They actually met, and you can actually go to the spot in which the Magna Carta was signed. How cool is that? But it's right next to a highway now, which is really awkward. But when they met, King John at that time, they met at this table in a field, and it was the barons on one side, nobility on the other, right? Going toe to toe. And they basically told him, you're king. We understand that. We bow before you, but you cannot do anything and everything without justification. There has to be some limits to your power. Now, that's a big thing, and I really want that to soak in because that wasn't even a thought at that time. All those people have been under a monarchy, under a king, their entire lives. Same thing for their parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents' parents. So to come up with that idea of limiting that power, that was huge. And so King John, he was not a happy camper. He was basically a spoiled kid, and he was pissed because they were telling him what to do. But he knew that he could not leave that table without signing some type of an agreement limiting his power, because if he did, the barons would storm the castle, he'd be overthrown, it'd be a whole thing, right? So he did something kind of sneaky, but it bit him in the behind later on, which is they went ahead and signed it. He's like, there you go, I'm giving you what you want. And the barons are like, woo, we win. And they, I don't know, this is how they ran away, guys, like this. And they're very excited. But he did something, again, kind of sneaky. The Magna Carta barely lived a month. It was very, very short in terms of its existence, because Butthead contacted the Pope and was like, wow, they're mean to me. Can you nullify what I signed? And the Pope at that time was like, sure. They nullified it. So it died. But the idea, the foundation that created the Magna Carta survived. It was the genie that they couldn't put back in the bottle, because word of mouth spread, and the people were given this idea that, hey, the king's power could be limited. It should be limited. And that concept, that idea, that spirit survived, which is pretty amazing. So in terms of what's in it, the Magna Carta itself, I want you to think of it kind of like our constitutional mascot, right? It survives as the inspiration for what we have in our own United States Constitution. So, I want you to read this with me to yourselves. It says, no free man shall be arrested or imprisoned or deceased or outlawed or exiled or in any way victimized, neither will we attack him or send anyone to attack him, except by the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. Now, as I'm reading that, I hope that you're hearing some of our own constitutional concepts in there. Does anybody recognize anything from that small paragraph within our own Constitution? And I'm going to give you a hint. The Fourth Amendment. Anybody know what's in there?
It's the right to due process and trial by your peers.
Yes, well, that's in the 5th and the 14th, and you're absolutely right. The concept of due process was born out of the Magna Carta. But also in here is people can't be arrested for no reason. They have to have justification. And that's what serves as our Fourth Amendment. You cannot be arrested without probable cause. That came from here, right? So think about how much of our own Constitution was born, created, inspired by this Magna Carta. Again, our founding fathers were smart cookies, but they didn't just wake up and say, we think we're going to create this thing called due process. They created it based off of this. They had a inspirational foundation, so to speak. But the other thing that the Magna Carta represented then, and has inspired our United States Constitution to limit government power, is because of that limitation on King John, right? The whole premise of the Magna Carta was to say the king is not above the law. He has limits too. So there are other aspects, and is it Stewart?
Duff Stewart. My
Duff
first name is Duff.
Duff. Okay, nice to meet you, Duff.
Nice to
Duff
meet
hit
you.
it on the nail head. He said, the concept of due process. He is exactly right. So there's one thing I want to say. Remember my saying, what's my motto, guys? Pop quiz. Anybody? I said it in the very
Kiss.
beginning. Yes, Vanessa, you got it right. KISS. Keep it simple, silly. So due process is one of those things that I know all of you have heard a million times. You hear it in movies. My due process rights have been violated. You hear it in TV shows. You see it in case law. But whenever I teach this face-to-face, I always ask students the first day of class, how would you define due process? And usually I have about 40 students. This semester I actually have 62, which is crazy. But in my face-to-face classes, when I ask that, I'll get 62 different answers. And I'm going to give you about $30,000 worth of law school and just this short statement. Are you guys ready for this? And this has taken me, by the way, like 20 years to develop. But due process means two things. It means the government can't take away your life, your liberty, or property without, are you ready? Ears perked up. Two things. One, telling you why, And number two, a chance to defend yourself. That's all that due process is. And again, it's so important, it's so fundamental to our democracy, to our Constitution, that it's not just in our Constitution once, it's in there twice. It's in the Fifth Amendment and in the 14th Amendment. Same exact clause. Look it up. You'll read it this week. The only difference is that the 14th Amendment says, you know, we should apply it to the states too. We forgot about that little thing. We should apply it to them too, not just the federal government, right? So due process, again, it prevents the government from taking away your life, your liberty, or your property without telling you why and without giving you a chance to defend yourself. That's due process. That's all it is. Kind of cool, right? And it's funny because when I was in law school, they overcomplicated it. I mean, they just beat us to death with this horrible description of due process that I could really never absorb. And it took me years and years and years to realize it's just those two things. That's all, right? Which I don't mean that flippantly. That's not all. It's massive. It's monumental. But that really is at its heart what due process means, which is an amazing thing. And it comes from the Magna Carta.
What were those two amendments that you said?
The Fifth Amendment and the 14th. So the Fifth Amendment, and just to kind of give y'all a little bit of background, the original Constitution did not apply to those states. The Founding Fathers were very concerned, not with state power, but with federal power. They did not want our branches of government to, in any way, shape, or form, echo that of a monarchy, of a king, because we had just beat that, right? In fact, one of my favorite lines from George Washington, and I think it's the coolest line historically, is he was actually asked in a letter to be king after the Revolutionary War. So we actually almost had a king. And thank God Washington was who he was, because he responded, I did not just help beat King George III to become King George I. Isn't that awesome? I love that line. But what he's saying is, we don't need another monarchy. We don't need another king. We need something new. We need structure. We need limitations. We need to have a government in place that has limits, because we already went through one that didn't, right? And we saw how that turned out. And so what's even neater than that is those words were so profound that he could renounce power instead of just grab at it. That does the name Napoleon Bonaparte, do y'all know who that is? Okay. Like they always say the Napoleon complex, right? But historically, he really wasn't that short. But his dying words, literally, when he's dying, he's about to croak, his dying words were, they wanted me to be another Washington. Isn't that awesome? Because he even recognized the fact that he was never able to renounce power like Washington. Instead, Napoleon grabbed at it. So it was profound, to say the least. So I kind of just gave you all of this in a nutshell. But after the Revolutionary War, the colonies were not united. We were broke as a joke. They asked George Washington to be king. He said, no, thank you, hard pass. And it is at this point, before the Constitution, again, was even a twinkle in our founders' eyes, that all we had were the Articles of Confederation. Now, I say this as nicely as I can, and pardon my language, but it sucked. And why did it suck? Why did the Articles of Confederation stink? Why were they not good? What did they lack?
Was it
Structure.
like structure, but like different branches, like it didn't really like have any checks and balances, so to say.
Good points. Excellent points. Let me check all here too. Somebody said all rights went to the state. Okay, you're all on the right track, but there's even a bigger one than that. So you see up a couple bullet points, I say that we were broke because war is expensive, right? War is very expensive. And the Articles of Confederation, they did not have a mechanism to require citizens to pay taxes. And so can you imagine, and I have to admit, if the government today were to say, Dr. Shaw, do you want to pay taxes this year? You don't have to, but it would be great. I'd be like, peace out. No, thank you. But of course, we do have to pay, and it goes toward our infrastructure and blah, 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 right? But then they didn't have that mechanism. And so nobody was paying taxes because everybody was like, woo, there's nothing to make me do it. And so there was no money going into our coffers, basically, to fix what was broken, what needed to be fixed and turned into bigger and better in terms of our infrastructure. And that was a problem. And so they actually went to Philadelphia, all of our founding fathers, to not create a United States Constitution initially. Originally, they were like, let's just fix the Articles of Confederation. But it was because of two individuals in particular that they said, I think that sucks. We should do something new. And again, I know that they said it much more eloquently than I just did. But that is how we got to where we are. Now, this week, I hope that as you read the United States Constitution, that you see how it's split up, right? And there was a method to their madness. You hear a lot of Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, a lot in the Constitution because he was a strong Federalist, meaning he wanted the federal government to be really strong. And so you see a lot of that in the United States Constitution. But there are a lot of trapdoors to limit its power and force the federal government to what? What word do you think fits there? Does the federal government have all the power?
To limit.
Control.
Okay. Share. They have to share. So there's a lot of power given to the federal government, but in our Bill of Rights, it actually says in a specific amendment that, okay, pump the brakes. You guys have a lot of power, but there's also power to the people. And there's power given to the states, unless that power is a specific federal power. If it's not a specific federal power, it goes where? Boop, 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 to the states, right? And so it forced.
That's the 10th amendment, correct?
Yes, Anna, good. Yes, high five. That's exactly right. So that was excellent. So when you see the word federalism, I want you to instantly think of the word share. That's what it means. Federalism is sharing. It's sharing power. So it's a division between the levels of government, but with shared powers. And as Etta correctly mentioned, and it is indeed in the 10th Amendment. So again, the United States Constitution is really a clear reflection, guys, on the founding fathers' fear. Again, we'd just been through the Revolutionary War. We fought a monarchy. We'd been through a monarchy. We saw the chaos that ensued. And as a result, they did not want that to be a repeat in what they were creating. And so what's really interesting is that initially when they created the United States Constitution, it was missing the Bill of Rights. It actually didn't have that in there. And it wasn't until the delegates went back to the states and said, hey, can you approve this? That the people were like, hard pass, because there's something really big missing and it's us, right? And there's one important detail I forgot to tell y'all. When our founding fathers went to Philadelphia, they made an extremely controversial, I mean, to the point where people hated them, guys, decision. Does anybody know what the first thing that they decided to do when they went to Philadelphia? They entered that room and they closed the doors. What was the first thing that they told the public? Anybody?
I don't remember that.
They made it 100% secret, not transparent, and not open to the public. And so that saying, I smell a rat, is attributed to Patrick O'Henry, who was at that point very critical of the founding fathers. He didn't trust them. He said, oh, great, they just made it secret. And so now we're just going to have another monarchy. They're just in those doors, behind those closed doors, and they're creating all this power to themselves. Yikes, right? So not a good vibe, not a good way to enter it. But nonetheless, when they came out, they indeed lacked really any meaty rights to we the people. So Patrick O'Henry is a little right. But there's one good thing out of this, was the people just didn't say, screw you, we're not ever going to ratify it. Instead, they made a deal. The delegates said, listen, we will come back in 3 years. And within 3 years, we'll have something for you guys, meaning the people. And if we do that, we can ratify it, right? And everybody's like, yeah, sure. Not thinking they'd actually do it, but they did. And by 1791, boom, they had the Bill of Rights. And so everything was, woo, everything's good, right? And so that is how it came about. Out of this delicate balance of the founders not wanting to repeat a monarchy, so having to limit government power, federal authority, but then they forgot, oh, what about the people? And so then they had to come back and do that. So think about this delicate dance that they were doing between balancing powers at all levels, at the federal level, at the state level, amongst the people. That's a lot of people to address and to take into consideration, right? And again, isn't it amazing that it still exists? Pretty incredible. Now,
Dr.
another, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dr. Shaw, is there any requirements to like add to the Bill of Rights? I guess I'm wondering because like of course they had to go back so many times. Like at first you couldn't have alcohol, and then they went back and added, oh wait, you can't have alcohol. Or first it was um due to race, you can
Mhm.
still vote. And then it was, oh wait, we forgot about the women. Or, you know, just kind of like the adding part to it. Because I mean, there's some things that we obviously have in law that's not a part of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, that we just have now listed as just law that we know, but they haven't added it like an amendment.
Amendments are extremely difficult, especially, and I want to just say now as in 2026. I mean, within the past 50 years, it's been extremely difficult to get in amendments. If you're looking at the process, I can actually post, I'll do that, Etta. There's actually a process to amend the Constitution, and it's very specific. I'll include that within my announcement so you can look through it, but it is extremely difficult, and the rationale for that is that if we just change it willy-nilly, then what's to say that, next year we won't want to change it again and then there's no stability. That's the argument, right? Some people agree with that, some people don't. I don't really have a horse in the game, but there is a specific process in place. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'll include the process for that in the announcements so that way you can look at it. But it's a good point. Um,
Thanks.
and it goes to one of the initial debates after they did the Bill of Rights, going to your point, Etta. And you're actually, I'm glad that you actually brought that up because as I'm talking, I'm realizing that you actually hit on perfectly one of the arguments against actually having any Bill of Rights. So the Federalists argued, Alexander Hamilton argued, we shouldn't have a Bill of Rights. And his argument was, if we do, then what's to say we might not leave something out? Or that something culturally will change? Or that we are being so specific in what rights we do have that 10 years from now we may say, oh, crud, we forgot this. And then it's too late, right? And so on the flip side, the anti-federalists, they said, well, pump the brakes. No, we should have Bill of Rights, but we should also have a process in place that if we do forget something, we can amendment, right? We can amend it. We can change it. We can update it. So they came to the compromise of having the Bill of Rights, but also having the ability to update it, tweak it, have the Supreme Court expand upon it, interpret it. I shouldn't say expand upon it, interpret it is the better way to say that, as a way to allay any of those fears. And so that's how we have what we have today. And that's where the Ninth Amendment comes in. So I love the Ninth Amendment, and I want you guys to look at this with me. It says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. You remember, again, my saying is KISS. An easy way to understand the Ninth Amendment is basically the founding fathers are saying, look, if we didn't write it down, it doesn't mean that the right doesn't exist. And I'll give you a perfect example of this is there's nowhere in the Constitution that says that we have the right to marry, especially gay marriage. There's nothing in there that says that. But is it a right? Absolutely. Why? Bingo, right there, the Ninth Amendment. So the Ninth Amendment is considered the compromise between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists to say, we want everything written down, versus those who say, no, we shouldn't, because if we do, we'll forget something. Well, ding, 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 ding. The Ninth Amendment says, just because something isn't in the Constitution doesn't mean that it isn't a right. It can still be a right. So that's where you see a lot of the rights, like gay marriage, being cocooned in protection by the Supreme Court is through the Ninth Amendment. So the Ninth Amendment is a catch-all. It's the whoops, we forgot that one. That's what the Ninth Amendment kind of stands for. Oh, good. And let's see. Pendleton said you can add amendments, but must be voted by 2/3 of all the states. Good. Absolutely. And that I'll put that in the announcements too. So I appreciate you guys. Did I go over? Oh, I went over by 1 minute. Dang it. I was almost there. So now this brings me to your first assignment. Now I'm not going to read this all to y'all because that would be painful, but this is what it looks like. And I want you to go down to the bottom with me where it says, as you know, you're on a tight time schedule. Your boss is very busy, so don't exceed 50 words. But she realizes you can answer all of this. So only one of the questions you need to answer. You don't need to answer both. Now, every term, I have somebody that's like, I'm going to be an overachiever and I'm going to tackle both. Don't. We want to see what you can do with your full attention on just one of those questions. Okay, just one. So the first question, do you advise having a stronger national government or stronger regional government? Regardless of your choice, please make sure you explain your decision. And then two, do you advise writing out the individual rights that will be protected, or would you rather give broadly worded protections in any governing constitution, blah, 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 blah. I will give you a big hint. Your first sentence should be your answer. So do you have, let's say, just say, for example, do you advise having stronger national government or stronger regional government? You should start out, if you're rocking with the national government, you should say, a stronger national government is preferable for several reasons. First, blah. Again, don't say, I think, or I recommend, or I advise. Filler words, don't do it. You only have 50 words. Be confident, be concise. Okay. So this is your time to get your wiggles out because this first week, I also want to kind of put in there, I'm grading. And when I'm grading, I'm looking to see if you have filler words. I'm looking to see if your argument makes sense, if your rationale is clear. If you go a couple words over, by the way, if you have like 57 words, I'm not going to deduct for that. Okay. So please don't feel like, oh my God, I have 52 words. I've got to get it perfect to 50. You don't. If it's a little over, it's okay. But when it starts getting into like 68, 70 plus words, that's when I'm going to be like, ah, dang, like you should have pulled back a little bit, right? So try to stay as close to 50 as you can. What else? Oh, and when I give feedback, I give a lot of feedback. Okay. And when you see it, I don't want you guys to think, because I had last term, a student was like, she called me crying and she was like, you wrote me so much. I'm horrible. I was like, no, absolutely the opposite. I write a lot of feedback to tell you if you did something right, I will tell you, you did this right because, and I'll give you a whole litany of why I think you rocked. But if there's an area where I think you need to improve on or that you might have missed, I'll tell you that too. Because I made a promise to myself 100 years ago that when I would get grades and the professor would say something like, good job, or, oh, you need to work a little bit harder, I'd be like, on what? Like, what did I do good in? What did I do bad in? So I always told myself if I ever got in this position, I would give feedback. So when you see a lot of feedback, I don't want you to think that you did bad or that, you're going to fail. The opposite. I'm giving you that much feedback so you can take whatever I tell you and improve or keep doing what you're doing as the weeks go on. Okay. So my caffeine's running down. I'm like, does anybody have any questions about the assignment or the work or any of that? And then, oh, I did get one in the chat. Let's see. Geneva asked, on the first discussion, are we allowed to fix it if it does not measure up to full points? Unfortunately not, Geneva. What you submit is what you submit. But with that being said, this first week we're very lenient because I know that you guys, this is new for a lot of you, and you're kind of getting your wiggles out in terms of how to approach this analysis. So this first week, I don't want to say everybody gets an A, but I am more concerned with getting you guys to where you need to be moving forward. So this is kind of my way to gauge it. So to gauge where you are. So this first week, do your best. I want to see the best of you to see what you're capable of. And then mold you like clay to where you just get better and better and better week to week to week. Because our goal with this class is to really develop you guys as legal scholars. And I'm going to tell you something kind of cool that again, I'm actually, I don't think I said this. I'm actually a second generation professor. My mom is a professor. And when I was a kid, she said something in her class that has always stuck with me. She said to her class, you guys walked in as students and you may be an A plus student, but I don't want an A plus student. I want an A plus scholar. And one of the students asked her what is the difference. And she said, a student just memorizes and they're really good at memorizing, and that's great. But a scholar will take that information and ask why. So that's what we encourage you all to develop moving through the program. But specifically, this course is you can memorize all this information. That's great. But I want to see what can you do with it. Think outside the box. You don't, and I'll give you some examples of that moving forward. And oh, the other thing is starting next week, I actually highlight 4 to 5 students every week, and I call them my long distance high fives of the week for a couple reasons. One, I want to highlight good work. But two, I want to emphasize that doesn't mean that any of you that are not recognized did a bad job. We have a lot of sections this term. We have 8 sections of about 40 students per section. So it's a lot of people. So if you're not chosen, don't get your feelings hurt. But I like to also do that because I share their posts with you and I highlight it so that way moving forward, you guys can model your own work on the A pluses that I show. So I hope it helps. Let's see. Jonathan asked, can you explain what the assignment meant to help us improve on if you haven't explained it already? I'll expand on that a little bit. So what we want to gauge in terms of this assignment, and I want to say improve on because we don't know where you're at and where you need to improve. But what we want to gauge is, if you choose the first one, do you understand what the national government versus the regional government emphasizes? Did you understand that? And if there is another way, we'll just leave that at that. And then the second one, if you choose that one, are you able to rationalize, justify your position in a cognizant way? So again, we're gauging where you guys are at with this first assignment to see what can you do with all the information that you've been given this first week. What can you do to get to your ultimate answer, which I'm going to say something and it's going to sound harsh, but I want you to hear me out. We don't care what you ultimately decide. If you decide national, cool. If you decide regional, great. What we care about is how did you get there? Does that make sense? So again, I don't want you to freak out and choosing the right answer because there is no right answer. What we want to see is how did you get there? Are you using the tools, the information in a good way? And if not, how can we help you do that? And let's see. And yes, I got the question. Just want to clarify, we only answer question 1 or 2, not both. Correct. It's your choice. You can do question 1, question 2. It's up to you, but don't do both. And then Geneva asked, so are posts not visible to all classmates? They are. So you won't see anybody else's until you post. Okay. So that's maybe why, nobody's posted anything yet on the discussion. I mean, on this assignment. So if you don't see anything, that's why. But you will once you submit your work. And hopefully that makes sense. All right. So any other questions or comments? I hope I didn't go too fast.
I have a quick question. The resources that we would use for this assignment would be the readings that you're wanting us to read, correct?
Correct. You got
Okay.
it. Yes, yes, yes. Any other questions, guys? I'm really proud of myself. Usually,
Yeah, I have a question. Can we use your lecture and as part of our resources?
fantastic question. Absolutely. So anything I give in my PowerPoint or lecture, and same thing for Dr. Helgi, anything we say or provide you guys in the form of PowerPoints or additional articles are fair game. So if I said something in this lecture that you want to use to support your position, absolutely use it. You just put in parentheses Shaw 2020, I was going to say 2025, 2026, and then that's cool. That's perfectly fine. Oh, and as an FYI, because I know I'm going to get this question, if you reference anything like the United States Constitution or a case name, that doesn't count against you in terms of your word count. So if you say the United States Constitution in Article 3, that again, we're not going to count that against you because that's a source. So just FYI. And then Sandra asked, do we still respond to two classmates? Absolutely. For this first discussion, you'll post your response to one or two, and then you'll need to respond to two of your classmates. And I'm glad you asked that. I do look at those, and I strongly encourage you guys to stay away from saying something like, good job, Geneva, right? Or I agree. That's great that you're being courteous to your classmates, but make sure that you explain why. Why do you agree with your classmate? Or if you disagree with them, also explain why. It doesn't have to, and there's no word count on those, by the way. So if you want to go really long, great. If you want to keep it kind of short, that's cool too. Just don't leave it to where there's no justification for your position to your classmates.
So I'm assuming that you want us to cite all of our sources, simplified, I'm sure, but so would you prefer that we state like, well, as an example, in the United States Constitution, and then blah, and then put U.S. Constitution in the parentheses, or is saying it, citing it, or how do you want to do that?
That's a great question. So you don't have to put in parentheses. If you or start out your sentence with the United States Constitution, blah, 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 that's enough. We don't, in this class at least, and I want to emphasize it because we're kind of out of the norm with a lot of the other classes in this program. We don't require you to give us the whole reference list or any formal reference format. As long as you just state it, if you just say the Supreme Court in article whatever, that's enough. You don't have to end that sentence with in parentheses the same thing, right? Because it's kind of redundant. So you don't have to do that. And I'm trying to think of anything else. But if you state something that you don't attribute directly to the Constitution, for example, let's just say you say the government cannot take away your life, liberty, or property without due process. Then you should end that in parentheses saying Fifth or 14th Amendment, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. Anything else?
Are we required to reference sources or no?
This first one, no, you
Okay.
will starting next week. So starting
Okay.
next week, you will be required to, but this week you don't have to. But if you do, just try to do it in the way that we talked about, but it's not a requirement.
So the 50 words will be on the post, and then you respond to other people's 50 words on the post. And that is the assignment.
Correct. So you'll post your response that stays hopefully within about 50 words, and then you'll be able to see other people's posts, and then you can respond to their initial post. And I also want to say this. In the past, some students have said, well, do I have to answer different people in order for it to count as the two? And the answer is no. If you're having a great conversation with one other classmate and you guys are going back and forth, then that can count as your two. Okay, so you don't have to find another random classmate if you're really having a good dialogue with just one other classmate. It's just respond at least two times to somebody or somebodies. All right. So I'm gonna slowly say if anybody else has any questions. Don't hesitate to let me know. Email either the law email or Canvas. I check Canvas throughout the day. So if you want to shoot me an email through that, that's perfectly fine. But we're 100% here for you guys. Again, I hope you can tell I love, 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 love this course, and so does Dr. Helgi. And again, if you attend his office hour, you'll adore him. He's great. But at any point, if you guys have questions, even if it's a small one, don't sit and panic by yourselves. And there is one warning I will give you about GroupMe's. I love GroupMe's, first off. I think they're great. I love students working together. But if you guys are going back and forth and you're like, no, they said this and I think this, or no, do that, come to us. Okay? Don't go down the GroupMe rabbit hole and confuse yourselves. So if there is a specific thing like that, make sure that the group confirms it with us instead of like swirling in chaos, because sometimes they can do that. But otherwise, I'm thrilled that you guys did that because I do think that's very, very helpful. And I almost remind myself because I need to share that, Cora, with the class. So I'll go back to the chat and make sure I have that. So let me go back up. All right. So thank you again, Cora, for doing that. That is awesome. I'm copying it so I can share it with your classmates. And yeah, again, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know. Again, we really love teaching this course and it's an important course. So that's it. Does it sound good, everybody?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Have a great day. You too. Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.